Welcome to the Private Practice Startup Podcast, where we help ambitious private practitioners across the globe to brand themselves and grow their dream practices. We chat with successful private practitioners, business coaches, and marketing experts, bringing you tons of practice building ninja tips. Visit privatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and our signature marketing e-course. Here are your co-hosts, Dr. Kate Campbell and Katie Lemieux.
Hey there, Startup Nation. Welcome back to another episode of the Private Practice Startup Podcast. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are joining us right in the middle of one of our podcast mini-series. We love doing podcast mini-series, and what we do is we choose a topic and have all of our guests speak on that topic. This topic has been amazing so far, really just listening to therapists' journeys and stories. And this podcast mini-series is called From Tribulations to Thriving as a Therapist. And so it's really stories of how therapists had difficulty at some point in their life and what they did to change that, and really make a lot of their pain their purpose and how they're inspiring others to really do the same. So this has been an awesome mini-series. So we hope that you listen to the entire mini-series and check out everyone's stories. Today, we're welcoming Mary Mannhardt from Grace Counseling Center. And Mary, at age 18, was a world-class runner with the hope of competing in the first women's Olympic marathon. In 1982, she survived a suicide attempt, leaving her paralyzed from the chest down. She's the author of 2 books detailing her recovery and journey called Dark Marathon and Client to Clinician, which will actually be published in August of this year. So before we introduce you to Mary and welcome her, we hope that you guys joined us yesterday as we got to speak with Luna Medina Wolf. Luna is a dear friend, a colleague, a local therapist here in South Florida. And honestly, it was the first time that Kate and I really got to hear Luna's journey and how she grew up in Israel in a domestic violence home and was emancipated from her parents, grew up in foster care in her teen years, and then how she migrated over to the U.S. with a stop in South America for 7 months backpacking. Anyways, her story is amazing, and it really is why she does what she does today and helping people with trauma. So definitely check that one out. It was beautiful to listen to our dear friend and colleague and understand her journey and what makes her so special. And Startup Nation, if you are brand new, what a great time to stop by and take a listen to us. We really appreciate it. Kate and I love giving gifts. You're part of our family now, and we would love to gift you your Dream Private Practice Playbook. This is the exact methodology that we have used to create our 6-figure private practices and helped many therapists do the same. You can grab that at privatepracticestartup.com. Head on over to the resources tab, and there you will see it. So before we dive in today and really to honor our guest stories, we're going to go ahead and take a quick moment for our sponsor. Therapy Notes. That's therapynotes.com. It's the highest rated electronic health record system that's specifically designed for behavioral health professionals. With over 1,000 verified reviews and an average customer rating of 4.9 out of 5 stars on trustpilot.com, Therapy Notes is the #1 rated EHR software that's proven to help automate your professional life. Billing, note-taking, scheduling, and telehealth have never been easier, with live telephone support available 7 days a week. So a real person can get you real answers really fast. Try Therapy Notes today with no strings attached. If you already use an EHR system, Therapy Notes can easily transfer your records safely and securely. Remember, telehealth is included completely free with every subscription. And there's always special discounts for nonprofits, students, and universities. Therapy Notes wants to personally thank you for making our world a safer space. Visit therapynotes.com and use promo code PPS, as in Private Practice Startup, to get 2 months free. That's promo code PPS. Hey there, Startup Nation listeners. We have an interesting fact for you. Did you know that 75% of people will judge your credibility based on your website design? In other words, if you've been putting off updating your private practice website, you could be driving away potential clients and missing out on that income. So today we want to talk to you about a company called Brighter Vision. Brighter Vision makes marketing simple for therapists, starting with a professional website that's specifically designed to attract your ideal clients and get them to contact you. All of their sites come with unlimited support and are fully optimized to rank well with search engines. They've even designed an automated blogging and social media platform specifically for mental health professionals. Best yet, we've worked with them to create an exclusive offer just for you. Get $10 off every single month for your entire first year on any new Brighter Vision website package. Plus, try out their new social media automation platform designed specifically for therapists for 3 full months completely free. That's a total savings of well over $200. To learn more and get started, head over to brightervision.com/try, TRY/startup. Again, that's brightervision.com/try/startup. Mary, welcome.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. And because we're on a podcast, you can't see, but Mary has this beautiful, bright pink, I don't know if it's a blazer or a shirt, but it's very vibrant. And yesterday she was on with us troubleshooting some tech issues and wearing pink again. So I'm loving the energy of your pink.
Thank you. May is pink month.
Or any day is pink month, right?
Yeah.
So Mary, share with us, where shall we start with your story?
Well, a good place to start with my story is probably my high school years. Just a quick wrap up. That's when I started loving and getting involved in the sport of long distance running. And I was a state champion in cross country and track. And my big brother, David, he got me running. He was a couple of years older, but it was right after Title IX, taking us back to 1976, where women were beginning to get scholarships. And that was my little incentive. I wanted to get a free ride to college because I knew my parents wouldn't be able to afford it. And I wanted to go to the best school I could go to. So I began running when I was 12 years old, and I continued it right up until I was 18 and a freshman in college. And I did get that coveted scholarship. I won a full scholarship, academic and athletic, to Georgetown University, and was going to run for them. And the year before I went away to college, I set a national record in the women's half marathon, and I ran a world-class time for the 10-kilometer run in New York City, where I finished right behind Joan Benoit, who did go on to win the first Olympic women's marathon.
Wow.
So those are some highlights from my running career. I don't want to bore our audience, but that's it in a nutshell.
I don't think that they're bored at all. So it's interesting, like what I heard drove you to running was a college scholarship. But for me, I loathe running. Like I will do any exercise except running. Did you have a passion for running, or this was more like a
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I mean, I ran an average, by the time I reached high school, I was running 5 miles before school in the morning and another 10 after school. So
wow.
I was just passionate about it. You hear the runner's high, and, I think if I didn't run, I maybe would have suffered with depression. But because I was out there, raising my serotonin level every day, it kept my mood up. So, I really was, I love the camaraderie. I love the friendships made. I love competition, and just the mere act of running itself, I enjoyed.
What do you miss the most about running, since it was something that you loved so much?
I miss, just being able to get up, put my running shoes on, and head out the door. But I've kind of, I wheel my chair. I get up every morning and I wheel my chair a couple miles on a pretty hilly route. So it keeps me in shape, and it keeps me going. I still am out there trying to raise my serotonin level, and that keeps me in my own little world of competition. I'm not racing anyone. I'm racing against myself. Mm-hmm. But it keeps me healthy, keeps my mood up, And I am a member of a group called Ainsley's Angels, which is a national inclusive athlete group. And what they do is, you've probably seen the runners in the marathons that push the people in the wheelchairs, like the full marathon. I'm involved in that group. And that keeps me out with people and keeps me in the racing atmosphere without having to do all the work. I enjoy that.
That's beautiful.
That is. And that's so cool that you continue to do that. And we'll definitely add that in our show notes for people who want to check it out.
Great. It's a wonderful organization.
So share with us what happened between high school and college or in college.
Yes. Well, what happened was when I was my junior year, I started, watching my weight. I never really worried about it before. I was a skinny kid. I genetically, I was built to be a runner. But in my, my senior year, I felt like, if I could just lose about 10 pounds, I looked at pictures, running magazines. We didn't have social media back then. But for me, like a trigger was running magazines. I would look through Runner's World or look through, whatever running magazines and look at the top, the very top echelon of runners. And I felt like if I just got this idea planted in my head that if I could be about 10 pounds thinner, everything would improve. I'd be that much better. And, I started developing like body, not loving my body, a poor body image. And I was solid muscle. There was nothing to be discontented about. But my mother struggled with anorexia herself. And my father was very weight conscious. So I think it was a lot of seeds were planted. And I had a boyfriend for 4 years before, during my high school years. And he went away to college the year before me. And that kind of left me with a broken heart because I was alone my senior year. And so with everything combined, it set the stage for me developing anorexia. And my weight dropped from 105 pounds to 85 pounds. Because as you know, anorexia is an addictive disorder. And I couldn't stop at 95. I had to keep going. And I became very ill. And approximately the summer before I went away to Georgetown, I knew I needed to put on another 10 pounds or I was going to lose everything. Because I couldn't run at 85 pounds. So I put on went back up to 95. And I adjusted to running at that weight. And I began to run better than ever. Ironically, I ran better than ever at 95. So my strategy wasn't all wrong. But what became very dangerous was my thought process started to be affected, my cognition. And I began to not be able to sleep. I was freezing all the time. I had all the classic signs. And the worst part was I worked as a lifeguard that summer. And I couldn't really focus even on the job. I remember a kid, they teased me. They said, Mary, there's someone drowning, and I was like, I suddenly jumped and I couldn't focus on things. And I was really, by the time I went away to Georgetown, I was really worried because I could not, I'm wondering, how am I going to get through such a competitive school as Georgetown when I haven't read a book all summer? I've always been an avid reader. And I told my mom and dad before I left for school, I said, I haven't read a book all summer, Mom and Dad, and I'm really scared.
What were your parents kind of like? How were they feeling? And did they express concern? Like what was going on? Or did you hide a lot of it?
I hid a lot of it. I didn't really complain. I kind of, I was like a lot of people develop anorexia, you have a strong will, and you back then there was not the treatment that there is today. Now we have very plush treatment centers. You can go to Hawaii, you can go to California, and, these beautiful treatment centers. Back then, little was known about anorexia. The first person to bring it out was Karen Carpenter, and she died, I believe it was 1983, the year after I got injured. But my parents, I kind of hid it all summer. I hid how I was troubled in my thinking. And it wasn't until like a couple weeks before school that I said, Mom and Dad, something's wrong with me. But I don't know what it's. I know I've lost weight, but my thinking is off and I can't focus. And when I was running, I would even hear voices.
Oh, wow.
I was never diagnosed with schizophrenia, but I was running and I would hear whatever I ate, I would hear hamburger, hamburger, hamburger while I was running. And that really scared me. So my parents talked to the coach at Georgetown, and they said, Mary comes there. We want to make sure you don't let her weight drop below 95 pounds. And he didn't keep his promise because he had me running at 85. So I just got progressively worse when I went away to Georgetown. And my parents were very worried.
Yeah. So Mary, you said little was really known about anorexia back then. And so what did your parents think and what did you think?
I thought that I didn't really, back then, not only did they not know about anorexia, they didn't know about mental illness. And I thought, I'm going crazy. That's what I thought. I'm sure. Like, I don't know what is happening to me. And I thought, well, I can try to put weight on, but, is that going to correct my mind? And I was isolated. I was always, very sociable and extroverted. I began to spend all my time alone, just with my thoughts. And my parents they took me to my family doctor. I always remember this. That's what they first reached out to. And he said that I had the pre-college jitters.
Oh,
that's what he told my parents.
What a way to minimize.
So when I went to when I finally went to Georgetown, they got me a psychologist, and we just sat and had tea together every day. It really was, it wasn't. I don't believe the professionals knew how to treat it. Even at such an elitist school. So they finally, I began, I just started to go downhill. I got lost on the campus. I got disoriented. I started skipping classes, and, I didn't want to leave there. And I kept trying. I would be in the library all night long trying to study. And my teammates were very kind to me and very gracious. But my parents finally came down one weekend, and they said, we're taking you to a psychiatrist. And he said I would have to be hospitalized because I was becoming suicidal. And that's what was going through my mind, is I don't want to live like this.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
And so what happened at that point when they took you to see the psychiatrist and they said that you needed to go into the hospital to stay safe?
Yeah, they said I need to go into a locked unit. I wasn't safe. And I just thought to me, that was the end of my world. Because I thought, I worked so hard to get that scholarship, 6 years to get that scholarship. And in a matter of weeks, I see it slipping away from me. And as I was in when I entered that locked ward, it was shocking. I mean, there were people in restraints. There were people yelling, screaming. And my father would say to me, now, Mary, you don't need to be upset. There are people in here are just like you. They're struggling, and they're very smart. We have, they're excellent students here. And to me, it was just like, I was just frightened. I'd never been in a psychiatric unit before. And it was, I guess the only word I can use, it was devastating. Mm-hmm. I mean, I had teammates would come visit me. I would get in cards. But I guess the way to sum it up most was I kept wishing I had a physical illness, which we know anorexia is partly a physical illness. But what I mean is I kept wishing I had like cancer or, something that was a physical illness, like that could be treated and you get better. Mm-hmm. And with this mental illness, to me, there was a terrible stigma about it. Mm-hmm. And I was ashamed. And I thought, who am I and who have I become? Mm-hmm. So that's, how the story went. And I was in the hospital for down at Georgetown about 6 weeks, and my insurance ran out. So I had to go to a different hospital in my hometown of Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And in Wilkes-Barre, I didn't get better, continued to get worse, and showed signs of like I didn't cut myself, but like picking at my, excoriation and just suicidal behaviors. So finally had been in the hospital in Wilkes-Barre about a month, and I was let out, and I took a drug overdose on New Year's Eve, went into convulsions and landed in the hospital again. And it was in February of 1982. I had graduated in 81, so it's about, a couple months later. February 1982, the doctor said I was no longer suicidal and could be let out of the hospital. And he told my parents that I was, they didn't have to worry about me running alone, that he thought I was okay. And within 24 hours of being discharged, I told my parents I was taking the dog for a walk, and I climbed up on a railroad bridge, and I had intended to drown myself. It was over the Susquehanna River, which runs through Wilkes-Barre. But instead of drowning, it was a miracle. I landed on an ice block, and the river had been flowing earlier that day. But when I jumped, I hit an ice block, and I remember calling out to God and saying, please don't let me die. And like in a split second, I had changed I had suddenly watched to live. Like people will say, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you call out to God before you jumped? But that's how it went. And, I had 2 collapsed lungs, broken ribs, very bad broken spinal cord, which left me paralyzed. And they sent out a search and rescue team. Luckily, they found me within a period of time where I was still breathing. But I had 2 collapsed lungs, so I was very close to death. I had a hypothermia of 85 degrees, and they rushed me to the local hospital. And miraculously, the emergency medicine team saved my life. And it was a miracle because it wasn't like a big hospital like you would have at Georgetown, or, it was just a little town hospital, but they'd managed to save my life.
Wow. I'm just blown away hearing your story and how quickly you spiraled from being, at the best shape of your life and, so much promise and so many goals ahead of you and so much possibility, and then just struggling with the eating disorder and not getting the help that you needed and just spiraling down and down. And through all of these different avenues of trying to reach out and get the help you needed, you weren't able to get that care and treatment that you so desperately needed. And with the stigma of mental health, especially back in those days, and the trauma of going inpatient, which is very different than how it is nowadays with treatment centers. It's so disappointing how the system failed you in a lot of ways at that time and kind of left you hanging in such just a delicate spot, to the point where you were so close to losing your life and taking your own life. It's a miracle that you survived that.
Yes, it was truly a miracle in many respects.
Wow.
And people say to me, like, I'm a Christian therapist now, and people say, like, well, why did you just give up, or why did you take your life? And I told them I always believed in God, but just having been through so much trauma that, of those 6 months of decompensating, I really was at the point where I didn't believe in God anymore. I didn't believe He cared for me. I'm like, where is He? So it was really, it took the wind out of my sails, so to speak. And you're right. It was a very quick, I decompensated very quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Mary, then, where does your story go from there? And
my story went from there was, I have always had a very supportive family. I had 2 brothers and a sister 9 years older. And my parents are people of strong faith. They're deceased now, but they're people of strong faith. And I was only in the hospital a couple days, and we had a lot of people praying for me. And I really, after coming to consciousness and kind of grasping this new reality, which took a while to grasp, just to realize I wasn't going to walk again. But I surrendered my life to God. I surrendered my life to the Lord. And I said, I became a born-again Christian, and I said, I cannot do this in my own strength. I cannot walk this road because I don't have the strength to do it. And, my sister, she was also born-again Christian. She kind of help me in my faith walk. And I really began to focus on how can I face life again, and how can I go out and face the world and not be ashamed, and turn my life around. And it was a slow process. It wasn't an overnight. It was a very gradual process. And in that process, I was in the hospital almost a year recovering. Wow. And I went from Wilkes-Barre to a major hospital in Philadelphia, because they had what was called a spinal cord injury center. And at the Spinal Cord Injury Center is where you learn to live in a wheelchair and be rehabilitated. And, gradually I healed from the collapsed lungs, my bones healed, but the paralysis stayed with me. And a doctor told my parents she will never walk again. And so in Philadelphia, I was very blessed to meet a psychiatrist who dealt with very difficult cases. And he was very prominent, and he was a Christian psychiatrist. And back then, psychiatrists actually did therapy.
Yeah, I remember
they didn't
that.
just prescribe pills. So he was a wonderful person, and he would actually come to the rehab center and visit me, and we would have our session like out in the hall of the rehab center. And, he really gave me, implanted in my heart, hope that there was a plan and purpose for my life. He, along with, a lot of other people who believed in me. And, it was at that time that somebody said to me, Mary, you have a really good story. You should write about what happened to you. And it was at that time I made a decision, as well with my parents, that I was not going to try to keep it a secret, what happened to me. And I said, maybe good can come out of this. If I can help one other person from jumping off a bridge, or one other athlete from developing anorexia, my story will not be in vain. And I began to write while I was still in the hospital. I always liked writing. And I wrote a story that was called Alive Again. And it was published in I don't know if you remember, back when we had magazines, but Young Miss Magazine and 17 Magazine took an excerpt from it. And, it kind of took off from there. Editor of a Christian college magazine, did a 2-part series based on my story called At All Cost. And he knew. So eventually I started to be invited on, like I was on the Today Show once I recovered, and I was on NBC World News Tonight. I remember People magazine came and did an expose. And I wasn't looking for fame. I was, trying to get the word out there that anorexia is very serious, as well as clinical depression, but there is hope that you can recover. And I really worked hard to get the word out there. And I was one of the first, mental health advocates, really, who went public with my own story. I mean, there's always been advocates, but, I was one of the first to really go public.
Wow.
It's such a courageous thing to be back in, at that time with the huge stigma, and just recovering yourself, to have the courage and strength to go out and share your story with that hope and intent to help, even if it's just one person, to save their life. And I'm sure you've impacted so many people over the years with your amazing story. What does it mean to you to be able to help people overcome their mental health issues, specifically the anorexia for athletes, and then also those struggling with suicidal ideations? Yeah,
it means a lot to me because, Dr. Fitzgibbons, his name was, it was after being treated by him when I decided I wanted to go into become a therapist myself. And there was another doctor, his name was Dr. Doyle, and he came into my life a little bit later. But they were both, made me decide that I want to help others like they helped me, because while I received the wrong help, I also ended up receiving proper help. Mm-hmm. And so for me as a therapist, today, it means so much to be able to share, use self-disclosure in a proper way and say, I know what you're feeling, being able to share part of my story. I understand how you feel, and just, being able to, my clients knowing that, I know everybody's different, and I may not, I say to them, I know you may not feel what I felt, but I think I can understand. And it's just to help in that capacity, and to know that people have read my book and, my upcoming book. It really, I'm very thankful that, God brought good out of a tragedy. And I'm very grateful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mary, we're so grateful that you reached out to us to share your story. I feel like when I think of a woman, like a symbolism of like really hammering down the stigma of mental health, like you're it, like from coming back from the 70s and 80s, like Kate was saying, when mental health, like we weren't even really sure. And that wasn't that far back. And really to, attempted suicide and survive it. And, I know people who have lost ones through suicide and it's not talked about. And so here you are courageous enough to, take your pain and really make it a purpose and share and uncover it and talk about it. And like, let's put it out there. And I just really appreciate that about you and what you've done. And so appreciate you being on our podcast. And, we're wondering, what is it that you hope, Startup Nation takes away from your message, or what do you inspire in others?
Well, the message I want to get out there is that recovery from mental illness is possible. I mean, everybody's story is different, but I believe that what I would like to resonate is don't ever give up, because I went through some very hard times. That's a whole other story. I'd like to say that I recovered quickly and, went through those things, became a therapist and lived happily ever after. But I had a lot of setbacks, during my 30s, even my 40s. But I never gave up. And I felt like God gave me a dream not an actual dream, but, a vision to share my story and to be able to help as many people as I can. And I just want to put out the message, whatever your dream, whether you're a therapist, whether you're a client, don't give up on it, because it may take a long time to pass. I didn't become an LPC till I was almost 50 years old, past 50. I was a school counselor before I was an LPC. And so that's the message I want to take out. It's hard having mental illness. It's hard struggling with depression or an eating disorder, but recovery is possible. And there is a right person for you to help you in your journey.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Well said. Thank you so much for being here. And for those of you who are really inspired by Mary's story, don't forget to check out her book, currently out, Dark Marathon. And you can check out Client to Clinician, coming in August 2021. Well, it was a pure joy, Mary, like just being here and just hearing your story. Like I kind of feel like Kate and I are a little like selfish. Like we get to just like be in your presence, and everyone who's contributing on this podcast mini series and hearing your stories. It's just really a delight and very touching for us. And we hope that, through our platform, we're able to help spread your message and your word. So thank you.
It was an honor to be invited. And I remember filling out the form online, and I said, I got to try for this one.
Yes, it's an honor.
It's a great topic that you picked, so it was a real honor to be on your show, Kate and Katie.
It's an honor to have you here, and we're just so inspired and in awe by what you've been through and your strength and courage and passion for being able to help so many people. And like Katie said, this is another way of being able to help share your message and your story. And we're so happy to be able to help in some little capacity with that. So thank you for being here. Thank you, Startup Nation, for
so much, Mary,
for your support and listening as well.
And we hope that you guys join us tomorrow as we get to host Sherilyn Schutz. And her story is really one about chronic illness turned to terminal illness, death, and then her own chronic illness for 4 years, where she was homebound after her husband had passed away, and how she's still living her dream. So another amazing story about hope, inspiration, and actually faith. So stay tuned for that one tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Startup Nation, we hope you're enjoying this series, and we want to encourage you to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Of course, share with your friends and fellow colleagues, and we will see you on tomorrow's episode. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for joining us on The Private Practice Startup. Visit theprivatepracticestartup.com for awesome resources, free trainings, attorney-approved private practice paperwork, and so much more.